Hi everyone, welcome back to Abu Aardvark's Middle East Channel Editor's Video Blog. I'm just back from New York where I was attending the Security Council session to discuss a resolution on Syria, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm also going to talk about the parliamentary elections taking place in Kuwait as we speak, and also about the horrific violence in Egypt and what it might mean for Egypt's transition to democracy. So let me just start right away with Syria. In the Security Council on Tuesday, there were intense and indeed fascinating discussions on the Council floor about the responsibility of the world and of the United Nations to respond to the atrocities taking place in Syria. There was a really strong call from not just the United States, France, and Britain, but from the Arab League and from Qatari Foreign Minister Hamid bin Jassim, calling in no uncertain terms for the world to act, while at the same time explicitly and clearly ruling out any authorization for the use of military force. Using my trusty iPad, I got this clip of Hillary Clinton laying out exactly what the United States was hoping to accomplish.
We will have a concerted effort over the next days to reach agreement in the Security Council to put forth a resolution that sends a message to President Assad and his regime. I think it was made abundantly clear that the Arab League has played an essential leadership role, and we want to support the Arab League's position, and we want to underscore that there is no intention to seek any authority or to pursue any kind of military intervention.
So what do we expect to see happen now? At the time that we're filming this, discussions are going on, and no one is quite sure exactly what's going to happen. Thanks to Lynch, our intrepid foreign policy / Washington Post UN reporter, we have the latest draft. And what it seems to suggest is that they're moving towards a consensus which will include support for the Arab League transition plan, but seems likely to remove most of the specific references to things like arms embargoes, International Criminal Court, which has been discussed, if not promoted, and even sanctions. And so a lot of people, especially members of the Syrian opposition, are viewing this as a weak and toothless resolution. There's no military action, and there doesn't seem to be an explicit call for Bashar al-Assad to step down. And some of them are even saying on Twitter that they would rather see Russia veto this resolution so that the international community could move on to something better. I think that's a mistake. I think that this is the international community's strategy. And I think that if this resolution fails, which is still a very real possibility, then things will be worse for the Syrian opposition and not better. Here's why. I think that the United States right now is gambling on the idea that things are happening quickly on the ground inside of Syria. And what they're trying to do, I think, is to increase the pressure on the Syrian regime from the outside. They can't actually do all that much in terms of either trade sanctions or the kinds of things that people would like to see. They understand that military action would be disastrous, and they don't want to make promises that they can't keep. But symbolic things matter. Getting a resolution at the UN would send an extremely strong signal, not just to the regime, but also to the Syrian population, including fence sitters, that the regime has lost its major international support, that there is a consensus against it, and that the future of a post-Assad Syria is coming. That could encourage people to get off the fence. At the same time, it creates what was originally 15 days, now in this draft it's 21 days, a series of reports from back to the United Nations where they have to report on Syrian compliance with the agreement. That creates a series of forcing moments where international attention will be focused upon what's happening in Syria, and it simply will not be possible for the world's attention to move away. I think that the combination of this increased scrutiny, the signal coming from the United Nations, and then the possibility of future tougher actions hanging over the head. ICC referrals later, if not now, arms embargoes later, sanctions later, gives you the possibility of escalating pressure without, and this is very important, without signaling a move towards a military action, which I think most people understand would be extremely counterproductive, dangerous, and risky. As much as we want to stop the violence and stop the killing, I think it's important for people to understand that if the United States or NATO or anyone else begins bombing, that doesn't end the crisis in Syria. That's not going to stop the killing any more than it did in the first 6 months in Libya. All it's going to do is create a new, more violent, more dangerous phase. I think that the international community right now is pushing to create a situation to escalate, to speed up and accelerate change from within. And hopefully we'll get the resolution that makes that happen. Anyway, that's my read of what I saw and heard at the Security Council on Tuesday. Okay, number 2, in Kuwait. They're having parliamentary elections today. This comes after the Prime Minister was forced to step down amid an enormous array of political complaints about corruption, the leaking of all kinds of fascinating information about royal family shenanigans to the press, and ongoing protests in the streets. Now, at one level, this isn't entirely new. Kuwait's been having parliamentary elections that matter for quite some time. And actually, compared to the rest of the Gulf, this is actually quite astonishing. Nevertheless, it is pretty interesting to see these elections and to see the level of enthusiasm and excitement that we're seeing on the streets of Kuwait today as voters go to the polls. To get some perspective on this, I decided to ask Ambassador Edward Skip Ghanim what he thought about it. He used to be America's ambassador to Kuwait. He's one of America's leading authorities on Kuwaiti politics. And here's what he had to say.
What do I think will happen? I think that the elections will largely return many of the members of parliament. We'll see a parliament as obstreperous and as active as the past few parliaments, holding the government to certain standards, challenging them in certain ways. I think it's a good thing. I think this is the way Kuwaitis do in fact express their political views.
Is this something really new for Kuwait, or do you think it's more of the same?
Well, honestly, I put it in the context of much of the same that we've seen before. There have been elections before, there have been issues before, challenges to the government. But what we really do see is a really vibrant political system with a parliament that does have power, that does exercise that influence, sometimes negatively, sometimes positively. And I see this as just a continuation of really dynamic politics in Kuwait.
So this is not the Arab Spring coming to Kuwait?
I don't see it as the Arab Spring in Kuwait, no.
All right, thanks a lot, Skip. Lastly, Egypt. The horror that struck Egypt yesterday, it really beggars belief. During a football match in Port Said, there were events which nobody really quite knows exactly what happened yet, but at latest count, something like 75 people have been killed. Thousands are reporting injuries, and there's a tremendous amount of anger among not only the fans of the football teams, but across the broader population. As I'm recording this, there are tense showdowns outside the Ministry of the Interior, marches taking place across the country, and a real air of crisis. The Parliament has convened, and they're trying to have discussions of this. They formed a fact-finding committee, and there's even talk that the Minister of the Interior might be brought in for parliamentary questioning. It's a really delicate moment. Now, at one level, this is the sort of thing which just shows how fragile the Egyptian transition has been. If it wasn't this, it could have been something else. Egyptian politics seems to be an endless progression of things that have the potential to turn into major crises. Even if this one doesn't turn into something worse than it already is, it should be sending a very strong signal about the risks of the ongoing political vacuum and of the ongoing, avoidable tragedy of the Ministry of the Interior, the police, and the general breakdown of trust in law and order, which is taking place across Egypt. Now, that said, I'm really quite unhappy with, and actually quite concerned about the immediate process by which actors on all sides immediately tried to fit this into their preconceived narratives and have tried to exploit it for political gain. for activists immediately. This was a SCAF conspiracy designed to shift attention away from the Battle of the Camels anniversary, or to carry out a massacre against the ultras who played such a role in Tahrir Square. And this strikes me as highly unlikely. But it seems to have widespread currency among activists. And at the train station, when activists rushed to the train station to welcome back the train from Port Said, they were there chanting right from the first moment, demanding the execution of Field Marshal Tantawi and bringing down the government. Again, this was just one more thing that they could use in their ongoing campaign in pursuit of the same things. On the other side, backers of the SCAF, and frankly the Muslim Brotherhood as well, were immediately blaming foreign conspiracies, hidden hands, hidden agendas, trying to torpedo the transition and bring things down. This is really unhealthy. The problem here is not conspiracy, it's institutional failure. And I think that we're less likely to get what we want: serious Ministry of the Interior reform, a smoother political transition, and real accountability if everybody immediately rushes back into those camps. I'm very worried about what's going on right now, especially the clashes which seem to be shaping up outside of the Ministry of the Interior. It seems that a lot of people are still spoiling for a fight. We were very lucky, very fortunate, that after the Tahrir demonstrations, we managed to avoid, to my surprise, frankly, some kind of renewal of violence, renewed clashes. This might be what brings us back to what we managed to avoid a week ago. And I really hope not. What we really need is for everyone to calm down and try and push this towards a real political transition. One of the most hopeful things I've seen has been the Parliament and the parliamentary initiative to try and grill the Minister of the Interior. If they did that, that would be one of the first signals that they're serious about trying to turn the Parliament into an effective and important political institution, and to begin to act as a check on the currently unconstrained power of the SCAF. That's something which could be a sign of hope if they manage to pull it off. But right now, at this time, it's just looking pretty grim. This has been episode 3 of Abu Aardvark's Middle East Channel Editor's video blog.